3 pages or 15 or 20 minutes, whatever you can do. And it's just, and that's one of her, you can answer in all sorts of exercises, but one of the foundational pieces is this daily, and she calls them morning pages, right? You got to do them in the morning. You don't have to, but it's ideal if you do. Is this stream of consciousness writing. Now, the way I've come to understand it is that it's, in a lot of ways, it's kind of you can view it so many different ways, right? For some people, it's a meditation, right? Mm-hmm. For other people, they can use it to communicate with, their guides and, their spiritual, their source of spiritual direction, whomever and whatever that may be. If you want to look at it a little more analytically, you can consider it to be kind of a left brain dump, right? Your left brain is very analytical. It's very chatty. It has a lot to say. It's constantly trying to work things out. Whereas your left brain, is not attached to your your right brain is not attached to your language centers, but your left brain is, right? So your left brain is where your language is not in your right brain. So when you meditate, you're shifting over to your right brain more. And it's really interesting. And so this stream of consciousness writing and you do this left brain dump, right? Then you kind of allow that part of you to be heard. And then it might quiet down a little bit and give your right brain a little more space to do what it needs to do in terms of the creativity, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It gives it a little bit more because you've kind of let your left brain just get it out, honey, just get it out, right? Right. And then your right brain is like, ooh, okay, like now that we've done that, like can I sit at the table and say something? And so you can view it that way. And so I did morning pages, and I would get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning so I could do them before my kids got up. And because it helped me, right? It really did help me to get all of that out, right? In the things that are coming out, like you kind of it does help you start working through things, right? You can work through business problems, you can work through personal problems just by doing this stream of consciousness writing. And then you can go back and look at them. Julia Cameron says absolutely nobody is allowed to read these. And I agree 100%. Like they are not for anyone's eyes but your own, because mm-hmm. you really need that safe space, right? To let it be as ugly and as messy, and as gossipy as it needs to be. And, and in The Artist's Way, she says, what happens, this interesting unconscious thing happens that when you hear yourself like whine and complain about something enough in the morning pages, like you will actually get tired of hearing yourself like whine and complain about that. And you'll unconsciously start to change it, right? Mm-hmm. Because it'll like all sorts of these subconscious and unconscious shifts start to happen. And it could be that your right brain is, actually having some space to get on board. And so that's one thing that I do recommend. And it's something that I did, right? The other thing that I did that was enormous for me was also out of Julia Cameron's Artist's Way program, protocol or system, is that I did start taking myself on artist dates. And I still think these are so fantastic. And basically what you're doing is you're taking, let's call it whatever you can do, whether it's like an hour and a half, you're taking like 2 hours of uninterrupted time to be with your inner artist, right? And mm-hmm. to listen to like literally, and this is like nobody else, like no kids, no partner, just you and your inner artist. And it kind of forces you to start listening to that, inner voice. Now, she refers to it as the inner artist. You can also refer to it as your intuition, your inner wisdom, your inner guides, whatever, feels right for you. But it kind of gets you in this habit of paying attention to what your intuition and what your inner artist have to say, right? And so, my inner artist and I have gone ice skating together, right? Because I like to ice skate, right? Mm-hmm. And as much as I adore my children, they are not at the place where ice skating is fun with them, right? It's mostly just super stressful because I'm trying to, be a mama bear and keep them safe.
Sure.
But like I have this little girl, like this inner artist in me that likes to ice skate, right? So there have been a couple of times where it's like I set aside the time, right? My kids are with their dad or I have childcare or whatever it is. And I go ice skating and then I like kind of like and it's like, well, that was super fun, right?
Hmm.
And it's just me and her, my inner me and me, basically. And and then I kind of pause and it's like, all right, well, what do you want to do next? And like she says different things. Like sometimes it's like, how about some Thai food, or another time it was like, I want like sushi and Star Wars, right? So it's like so it doesn't have to all be creative. It doesn't like, I mean, and I would actually encourage like the artists and like the creatives who are hearing this to say like, this is not necessarily like your working time, right?
Hmm.
You're not necessarily like setting aside this time to go to your studio. You might,
Hmm.
right? Because that may be what your inner artist wants to do. Like your inner artist might say, "Hey, we haven't painted in 2 weeks. Like we got to go do this," right? But your inner artist might just need a little playtime, right? Because I don't know about you, but I have a hard time letting myself just play,
Hmm.
right? And just like have that free time, like that's totally unproductive, that's total downtime, that's not in front of the TV, right? And just and and again, like your inner artist might just be like, oh, I totally want to watch that movie, and that's awesome, right? But I
Right.
think because I think it really like the practice is about listening to your intuition and
Hmm.
your inner self. And so I'm trying to think what else we've done. I mean, I definitely like we did a little overnight, like up in Sausalito. Like I've just done different things, or maybe we went to and checked out some open studios and like bought a piece of art or like I mean but it really can be like a trip to the art supply store and like you're getting glitter glue and scissors and construction paper and you're just making something, right? Because that's what your inner artist wants to do or because you really have an intention to honor that creative part of yourself, right? Or
Hmm.
maybe that child, right, that used to create that you feel like you want to reconnect with. And so those are two things that I did, that I still practice, right? Because I feel like they allow me to keep those channels open where I'm really paying attention to like the core of my being. I mean, we're talking like authentic self type of stuff, right? And
Hmm.
when I'm connected with that authentic self, Yuri, like that's when I really can, like my creativity just explodes,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm not thinking about like, will this sell, right? I mean, that is like the thing, make money with this, will this sell, and it's hard, like, because we do need to fund the habit, right? I mean, I buy big canvases, right? And so sometimes I really do like I do need to think about like where am I going to put this? Like how am I going to offload this? How am I going to pay for that big canvas? Um, and so I'm not saying let's be totally impractical, but if I can just stay in that place of like my raw, unfiltered, unadulterated, creative, authentic self
Hmm.
and and doing morning pages, going on artist dates are surefire ways to do that. I also think that working with your non-dominant hand, so I'm right-handed, right? So I do all my writing with my right hand. So for me, working with my non-dominant hand is giving the pen or the
Hmm.
paintbrush or the whatever it is to my left hand and saying, go for it, right? And writing or drawing or painting with your non-dominant hand because your non-dominant hand isn't attached to that. Typically it varies, for different people. There's a percentage breakout of which hand is connected to which, but typically your non-dominant hand is connected to your right brain where more of your creative and intuitive centers are located. And so, doing some blind contour drawing where you're looking at an object and you're not looking at your paper and you're drawing as slowly and mindfully and intentionally as possible with your non-dominant hand, about 15 or 20 seconds of that is going to kick you straight into your right brain, right? And it'll allow you to get basically to start tapping that out of the box thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and non-dominant hand work can be really interesting because you can ask yourself, you can write a question with your non-dominant hand, or I'm sorry, with your dominant hand. So we'll get granular. Write a question with your right hand, right? If
Okay.
you're right-handed. If you're right-handed, write a question with your right hand. And ask whatever it is that you need to ask. Who are you? How old are you? What are you? And then let your left hand answer. Now, if you're left-handed, just switch this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let your non-dominant hand answer. And when it comes out looking like, kindergarten scratch or scribbles or, and it's like very wobbly and very shaky, like do your best to be compassionate and not judge it, right? And just listen, right, to what comes out. And so so I think there's all, these are different, these are kind of like the tips for accessing your, you can talk to yourself, you can talk to your inner artist that way, you can talk to a body part that way. These are some things that I picked up, right? You can actually talk to different body parts, you can talk to your inner self, and it's just another way of kind of tapping into that right brain, tapping into your authentic self, and seeing what's there. But I'd say those are, a lot of the things that I feel like have helped propel me forward on my
Okay.
journey, and and I still, take myself on a 20-minute walk, right? If I need a break, if I'm in it, right? Because I feel like getting outside and getting in nature is also very healing. So there's a variety of things that, there's some movement exercises you can do, but I like some of the things that Julia Cameron presented. I feel like they're tried and tested.
Yeah. Wonderful. So in your own journey, there's times when you felt fearful about moving forward on a new decision or a project. How did you think about fear and how did you overcome it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, because I definitely know fear, and
Mm-hmm.
I definitely know dipping into fear, and I have also experienced how um, really inhibits my creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, there's a lot of different ways that I've looked at it, right? I mean, a lot of ways I've approached fear like just with my own personal faith, like in the universe, and looking back on my personal experience, saying like, okay, like I can look at these experiences, right? These really tough, challenging, scary experiences, right? And look back and say like, I made it through, right? And I felt like the universe did have my back, and I felt like I was terrified. I mean, walking through a divorce, like when I was unemployed and I had two, very young children, my kids were 1 and 3, and and thinking like, oh my God, like how am I going to do this, right? I've got to get divorced and re-enter the workforce, and and figure all of this out, and and it was terrifying, but I made it through. So I think sometimes it does help me to look back at past events, right? I mean, literally make a list of, some of these experiences that were terrifying, but that you were able to walk through. I think that's one way to do it. I know a lot of people do counteract their fear with their personal faith, right? Whether it's in the universe or their own spiritual belief, whatever that is. And I mention that because I truly believe that like faith is, in whatever your faith in the unseen is, it really will, it is a good antidote for fear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing that I want to say is like sometimes our fear it needs to have a voice, right? So when you can give your fear a seat at the table, right? And say like, come on in, honey.